Aloha aina, and welcome to Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kawainui Foundation. I'm Ehu Keikahu Cardwell, and here we are today on the windward side of Oahu at Kawainui Marsh. And we have as our guest on the show today none other than Doc Burrows. Doc, aloha.
Aloha.
Welcome to the show. How are you?
Fine.
Good. Good to have you on.
Yep.
Good. So Doc, you're the caretaker for Kawainui Marsh here, yeah?
Well, let's say one of the caretakers. There's so many
Really?
out there, and for the past years, there have been many other Hawaiian and community organizations that were very protective of Kawainui Marsh, preventing it from being developed. In fact, there were plans back in the late 40s and 50s to build a shopping center, in a sense, in Kawainui.
Here?
Here.
Oh, my
Not
goodness.
this particular place here, but probably further in towards Monowili, that site there.
Wow.
In
So,
fact,
so tell me why Kawainui Marsh, why is it important? Why is it important to preserve this?
well, the most important thing is that it's association with the Hawaiian culture, the Hawaiian history in the past there. In fact, Kawainui Marsh, as well as Hamakua wetlands, was recognized by the Ramsar Convention as an international wetlands of importance.
Really?
One of 22 in the United States and one of 1,600 throughout the world.
Wow, that's
And-
amazing.
And the reason was not because of the wetlands itself, it's the size of acreage, because it's less than 1,000 acres, as compared to the Florida Everglades, Okinofe Swamp, thousands of acres.
Right.
In fact, Cattle Lake, Texas, I just was there in October, there's about 30,000 acres there.
So this is really small compared to those
Very
others.
small as far as the size.
But nevertheless important.
Yes, you're correct. And not because of the abundance of the wildlife, because you could count them on your fingers, although we have 3, possibly 4, endangered wetland birds. But it was because of our cultural sites.
So tell me, Doc, what occurred here thousands of years ago that was so important?
Well, there is a long history. You could go into the geological history, going back 10,000 years ago,
Really?
when Kawainui Marsh was an inland ocean bay.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
How do we know? When we take core samples within the marsh, we hit, for instance, silt, and after that, sand, coral sand, and then coral itself there. So indicated that at one time, thousands of years ago, this was an inland ocean bay. But over a period of time, where we're walking here, these were reefs, coral reefs here.
No kidding.
Patch reefs. You might see them in Kaneohe Bay even today. But the patch reefs then became much larger in size. And then, of course, the sand dunes from the beach. This was a very sandy area. So this was like an island,
Gotcha.
a barrier island. And then it separated the ocean waters from the fresh waters that entered Kawainui. So this became a lagoon. As far back as, well, even 2,000 years ago, when the first Hawaiians came to the shores of the windward side of the island. At that time, more a lagoon.
So what did they use this for 2,000 years ago?
Well, 2,000 years ago, as we walk out, I will show you where the ancient fish pond was located.
Really?
Some 450 acres in size.
Wow.
One of the largest fish ponds in the Hawaiian Islands at that particular time.
Amazing.
And all within the marsh area where the streams from Kawainui, Kahanaiki would flow into Kawainui was devoted to the growing of kalo. So you had extensive taro fields, not only in Kawainui, but also in the Kapa'a area there and Monowili there. Very, very rich, productive area.
So back then, 2,000 years ago, this thing went way back then, yeah?
Oh yes, yes,
Wow.
yes. We'll see more of it as we
Okay.
as we walk along.
All right, good.
But however, one of the first things that they did was to build their temples of worship. And that's where Ulupo Heiau was constructed, perhaps at first as the Ma Pili Heiau, an agriculture heiau, to ensure the productivity of the land. And then we have other heiau situated, such as Pahukini, where you see the Kapa'a land transfer site there. You see that mountain
there.
hill?
Yep.
Is actually
Yep.
a mound of garbage dump, you know.
Yes, yes.
But right beside it or inside of it is Pahukini Heiau. And then further down below is another heiau called Holomakani Heiau. At least the three large heiaus that was related to Kawainui Marsh. We have additional heiau located within Manuili Valley, maybe some 7 or 8 other heiau situated there. But it was because of the cultural history associated with Kawainui Marsh that the Ramsar Convention back, just 2 years ago, gave us this recognition as a wetlands of international importance.
So that only happened 2 years ago.
2 years
That's
ago.
like yesterday.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So the reason this place was saved and so important is because of what occurred thousands of years ago here.
Yes, and its relationship, to
Yes.
the Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian spiritual practices that took place here. So that in itself is very, very important, significant.
Wow.
But the other is the wetlands, in itself, because
Right over
Kawainui-
here.
Yes.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah, because Kawainui is the largest wetlands that we have in the Hawaiian Islands.
Is that right?
Yes.
So wait a minute. Kawainui Marsh
Yes.
is the largest wetlands in the entire archipelago.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, hundreds of years ago, there was an abundance of wildlife, not only of our endangered wetland birds, but also of the migratory birds that would come here, especially in the winter season. Thousands of birds, not only in Kawainui, but in Hamakua and Ka'elipu,
Wow.
because we have the two, at that time, fish ponds.
Right.
I said one time this was known as Kawainui Fish Pond. And so was Ka'elipu, also known as a fish pond there. So as a fish pond, here was some 450 acres, as said, the largest fish pond here. So in combination with the fish pond, with the growing apparel, and of course on the slopes in the dryland areas where sweet potato, breadfruit, sugarcane, all of the food crops or plants that our kupuna, our ancestors of the past, brought with them in order to subsist. And so it's a remarkable thing that before the coming of Westerners to the shores of Hawaii, Hawaiians were in their ahupua'a, especially the ahupua'a of Kailua, you have Kaneohe, Waimanalo, were very self-sufficient, very independent in their food subsistence there. We'll not only have Kawainui, in fact right here is an estuary where the ocean waters come in from the ocean bay.
Right over there.
And mixes with the fresh waters coming from Kawainui. So this provides a nursery ground for the young fish, whether it's, for instance, the mullet or the ava, etc., would be here. But also of the opu as well. And I grew up here in Kailua, going back to the 30s and 40s here.
So you've seen a lot of change
A
here.
lot of change, yeah. In fact, it was stated that when I was growing up back in the 30s and 40s, the population was 1,000 or less. Today, the population of Kailua is about 37,000.
That's a little change, all right, yeah.
And of course, over the years, a lot of urbanization have taken place here. The building of roadways. Well, you need streets, need roads, houses, you need homes, schools and hospitals, and that's fine. But in the process, the landscape, the cultural landscape, as well as the cultural sites have been destroyed or damaged and no more. So the remnants of that, however, still exists within Kawainui and along the lands, the borders of Kawainui. And this is what we call our cultural kipuka. And that's why efforts...
And what does that mean, cultural kipuka?
Well, a kipuka is an area when you have lava flows coming into over the land, burning the forests and destroying the wildlife there, and becomes lava fields. But it may surround an area, it could be a valley, a gorge, that within this area, still intact, it survives the native trees, koa trees, ohia trees, and the wildlife that exists, not only of the birds but insects as well. So this kipuka then serves as a reservoir for seeds and plants for the future.
Ah,
And
amazing.
that then enables new growth to begin on lava flows once
All
again.
over again. Wow.
So in this particular area here, we are, instead of lava flows, we are surrounded by the modernization of urbanization around.
Yes.
And what remains intact, this is a kipuka, that area.
Ah, gotcha.
Whatever plant life, whatever wildlife that exists needs to be not only protected, needs to be conserved, needs to be restored, so that in years to come, then this serves as seeds there for that part of the past. I used to live also in Coconut Grove there too.
Really?
And I remember as a young child seeing and participating in growing taro.
Uh-huh.
My first experience
Really?
with taro. And then cooking the taro, and then making poi from taro. And the waters were taken from Kawainui Marsh here because it borders Coconut Grove. But now you don't see any taro growing in Coconut Grove. Very few, if any, in Kawainui, where it used to be. So that is one of our efforts of restoring the lo'ikalo at Ulupo Heiau, where the waters from the heiau is used not only for the ceremony ritual purposes, not only for drinking, but also for the growing of kalo.
Wow.
There. So there, as it exists today, you don't see any other taro growing in here. And where taro was grown in Kawainui, you don't see that at all. However, back in Monowili Valley, where taro used to be grown, there's only one particular small area where it's grown now. So between Ulupo Heiau, the upper part of Monowili, is where taro is now only grown. So it is our hope, however, as we culturally reclaim these lands. And it's not only for the conservation of the wetlands for our wildlife or endangered species of birds, or for endangered or endemic plants, but also to grow food once again where once it's grown.
Wow.
So what we hope to do and see in years to come is that from Ulupo down to Kawainui and going up to Monowili, connecting all of that together and restoring the stream life and the growing of taro once again.
Just like it was before.
As before.
Wow.
And we have so much to learn as to how our kapuna were able to manage the resources wisely. This is what we have to learn from here.
That's one of the main lessons, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. You have some ladies that come down here and help you out, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Tell us about who they are and where they're from, how often they come down, and what you have them do.
These ladies are from the Windward Community Correctional Center.
So they're inmates in a jail.
In jail, yes, inmates in jail. And they work in different areas in Kailua Town, along the roadways, etc. But I first met them when they started to work here at Kaha Park. And I was asked to meet them and to tell them through the stories, the mo'olelo of Kawainui. And that's how we got started. And then I asked whether it'd be possible for the ladies to also work at Ulupo Heiau and Napo Hako Hawahini, because these are our cultural sites. And when they come to these sites, it's different than working elsewhere, because they're coming to a place where it is once part of them, and they've forgotten that history, that connection. So when they come to Ulupo and Napo Hako, it is once again reconnecting with the land, but it's more than the land and the plants. It's reconnecting with their ancestral spirits.
Yes.
And with the elders there. And this becomes much more significant, much more important to them to once again identifying themselves not only as Hawaiians, but as women as well and as human beings. Very, very important there.
What kind of changes have you seen occur in them working in these areas with you?
Well, they are very respectful. They are very hardworking. They're very loving here. And it's like, my nieces, in fact, some of the women, one or two, have been my former students.
Really?
That come in there.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
So it's important, is being with them and they with me, because together, the efforts, the meaning of what we're doing becomes more significant.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. This is an islet here.
Yes, look at that. Right here.
That we took it upon ourselves to re-landscape it, because these islets, as part of the mitigation for this flood control, was constructed for the wetland birds. But you would have the alien vegetation that are like ironwood, Christmasberry, and so forth, overgrowing the islands, and the birds, the ducks, mallards, and so forth, not able to get onto the island. Every fourth Saturdays, I have a community project here. In fact, last Saturday was the first time that we had involved the community, especially what I like to see are residents who live in Kailua, or the people who live in homes right next to the Kawainui Xeriscape garden come out to help us to weed among the native plants. So last week, Saturday, was the first time that we had that community group. That gentleman you saw that came in was one of the ones that was walking by and decided to stop by and to help us.
Is that right?
Doing.
Amazing.
Yeah, so different school groups, community groups, and so forth would take part in taking care of sites like this here, as you see it here.
Wow, that's really something.
So this is an example. However, all what we're doing are just examples as to what can be done on a larger scale in different areas as well. So here, what we're looking at is the estuary portion of Kawainui Marsh, where you have the fresh waters from Manawili, Kahanaiki, Kapa'a streams here flowing into the marsh and then going out to Oniava Canal. However, when the levee was constructed, what they did was to block the natural flow of water that used to flow from Kawainui into Kailipulu Pond and out into Kailua Beach. And back in the 30s, that's where I used to live also, near Kailipulu Pond. And there, at that time, we swam in the water. It was clean enough to swim. We set up our nets. We were able to catch the fish, opu, opai, and be able to eat it. And of course, the wildlife existed there at that time.
And plentiful.
Plentiful.
I don't know if the camera can pick it up or not, but let's just be quiet for a second and have the camera take in this beautiful view and the beautiful sounds of the water, the wind, the birds in this beautiful place.
So you're in the Ahu Pua'a of Kailua, surrounded by the landforms Kona Hua Nui, and all of these land features or forms have a mo'olelo, a story as to how they were formed. And this is how the landscape was explained to the young. And then, of course, that's Olamana there, the peak. And Olamana was said to be a chief that was not kind to his people. And so you have a warrior from Kauai, Palila, that comes there with his flying club, and then makes war or battles with Olamana and cuts Olamana into two parts. Part of his body remains there, as you see, and the other part becomes Mahinui on the other side there.
Right over there.
Yes.
Wow.
But it tells us that, if the chief does not act responsibly and kind to his people, then he should be what? Getting rid of.
Fired.
Fired there as well. So these are the stories.
Wow.
And of course you have Keola Hills and out into Kailua Bay. So as I said, 10,000 years ago, this was an inland ocean bay.
Amazing.
Then gradually, as the island forms across, this becomes a lagoon. And then when the first Hawaiians come here to the shores of the windward side of the island, they build a heiau. Hulupo is located directly across. Holomakani is located there. Pahokini is just right across this ridge line here. And then other heiau related to Kawainui Marsh in this ahupua of Kailua.
Doc, why are marshes? Why are they important to the areas? Why are they important to the people who live around here?
Well, for one thing, marshes is where the water collects, water that rains and flows in streams there. And then the marsh also served as an area where they can plant their taro. And whatever island you go to, whatever wetlands you see, are marshes there. So it's very important for the Hawaiians at that time to grow the taro very productively. And of course, marshes, in our case here in Kailua, was used to build the ancient fish pond. So 450 acres in size there. Of course, the marshes and the waterways served as traveling areas for the native aquatic life, like the opu, the shrimp. And I remember whenever there was high water within the marsh, opening up the sandbar in Kailua, we used to be there with our nets, collecting the opu as they goes out to sea. However, today, you find very little, or if any, opu. So the marshes serve for Hawaiians culturally as a place for food. But also marshes are very important because they serve as a nursery for young fish, and also as a habitat for the wetland birds, such as the alaiula, such as the ayo, the Hawaiian stilt, or the Hawaiian duck, as well, or the Hawaiian coot, are endangered species.
Doc, I got to ask you personally, why do you do this? Why do you do what you do here?
Well, probably when I first started out as an environmentalist, as a conservationist, it was because of the plant life, because of the wildlife. But throughout the recent years, as I have regained my knowledge and connection to the past, it is one of caring for my elders, whether in the plant life forms or the wildlife or even the rocks that you see here. So it's caring not only for plant life, but one's ancestors, one's kapuna.
And for those watching our show today, watching us in this beautiful place, Kawainui Marsh, viewers who might be interested in becoming involved in something like this, what would you say to them? What message do you have for them?
Well, first of all, wherever you are, find out what's going on in your particular place. You have an ahupua there. There are probably groups that are working at their particular site. So take advantage of that. It's announced in the papers, on the website, etc. And that's very important. First of all, become knowledgeable about the area, and then take part in the service projects that they may have going on at the respective places, and then help to not only become, let's say, a follower, but also take the leadership yourself there as well, and especially to teach our youth.
Yes. How important a role does places like Kawainui Marsh play in the future of Hawaii?
Well, let's see. One is, environmentally, as the wetlands here, fast disappearing throughout the world, as well as nationally. So if we don't have wetlands like this here, then we have lost that biological diversity that exists here. And the thing is that The plants that we're planting here was once part of that landscape of the past, a cultural landscape. And if we don't have the cultural landscape in the future, we lose our identity as indigenous peoples. We lose our identity as who we are as Hawaiians, because the Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian as a ethnic group, evolved from that landscape.
Yeah.
If you go to elsewhere, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, where is that cultural landscape? It's not there anymore.
It's gone.
Yeah. Go to Waikiki. Where is that landscape?
It's gone.
Right. So here, as you see it, it still exists here. So this is the culture, kipuka, of Kailua that I talk about, that needs to be not only protected, conserved, restored, but once again, make it into a food basket as once it was.
Wow. And Doc, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much
Yeah.
for the tour. Thank you very, very much for what you're doing for Kawainui Marsh. I personally hate to leave here. This is so beautiful. You at home, I hope the camera can pick up the beauty and the impact of this place, because it's just absolutely breathtaking. Thank you very much for being with us, Doc. You've been watching Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kawainui Foundation. I'm Kahu Cardwell, and remember, watch us on the web on voicesoftruth.tv.com and our weekly video commentaries on freehawaiitv.com. It's all, of course, part of the Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy this view one last time, and until next time, ahui ho!